In this game, pawn sacrifice will be designed to win time. It is a game between Caruana and Carlsen, played in Vaikanze tournament 2015. Let's see how it went. It was Sicilian, Rossolimo variation. So e4, c5, knight e3, knight c6, bishop b5, g6, bishop c6, d takes c6. Magnus Carlsen loves to play Rossolimo variation with black, and he has actually fantastic results. In general, we have, this is English opening, colors reversed. d3, bishop g7, h3, knight f6, knight c3, b6, not necessarily to push this pawn immediately, but okay, it comes in a way handy because white played now move bishop e3, so it will need to be defended anyway. e5, okay, black is using the fact that this pawn cannot really be taken, because it can be taken, but if white takes it, black is going to get his material back, so kind of, okay, he doesn't really complain about this, because now let's suppose that we continue on this taking spree. Well, I can even take here if I want to. So this is going to work for me. So e5, castles, castles. Still pawn cannot be eaten for same reason. a3, queen e7, now protecting this pawn. Queen b1. Idea of white is kind of clear. White would like to push b4. And let's suppose that black plays some random move. Queen b1. Let's suppose that black plays some random move, just to explain the white's idea. White would like to push b4. And now either to double black's pawns, where c5 would be tough to defend, or if black takes, to take back with the pawn and to try to utilize the a file. So then, where is black's counterplay? Well, Magnus decides that his counterplay is on the king side, and wants to stage something like King's Indian type of pawn pushing business. So knight h5, he would like to push his pawns, almost like in a King's Indian. So knight h5, b4. Caruana is playing for his plan. f5, b takes c5, f4, bishop d2, b takes c5. Attack of black is clear, so attack will come. So white better tries to be clever and to get something on a queen side going himself. So queen b3 check, bishop e6, queen a4, hitting on a pawn, which black has to defend, rook c8. And now white decides to attack pawn on the c5. Because again, white cannot really stop very well this King's Indian type of push which black is doing. If queen a6, well then, pawn pushing with g5 will basically work. Let's say rook b1, and now, for example, continue pushing with g4. Rook b7, queen f6. Take on g4, bishop g4. Queen a7, taking a pawn. Let's say c4, giving another pawn, in order to open up the position. And now let's say dc4. There could be various ways here. For example, king h8 is a one move which makes sense to activate a rook. The second idea is bishop f3, gf3, let's say queen h4. I won't move queen h3. And if, let's say, move king g2, now rook f6. So this is rather serious attack, very serious attack. So Caruana played move queen a5 to focus on c5 pawn. And now we have interesting situation in this middle game. Carlsen, of course, is not interested about this pawn at all. And he decides that actually the time factor is crucial. And he decided it's not here. He decided the time factor was crucial, maybe something like here. Because once he went for this, knight h5, b4, Magnus, he understood that situation like this, what happened will happen. And he already at that time decided that in this game, time is a factor, not this one pawn. And he actually judged it right, because his attack will prove to be worth more than the pawn which Caruana is going to collect. So g5, knight a4, g4. Takes, a4, bishop g4. Queen c5. Of course, white would love to trade queens, but it doesn't happen. Queen f6. Here is not easy for a white, because, for example, if rook e1 to prepare escape with the king, right, is not exactly so simple, because let's say rook f7 I play, which is very useful move. I'm ready maybe to move king and to put another rook to g8 and mate. And now, what is the problem if white runs with king f1? Well, the problem is that after knight g3, he is under mating attack here, because takes, and simply there are no moves here. You cannot escape, because king is not escaping the mating attack. This is a problem in this particular position, and this knight, of course, is totally out of play. So Caruana played move knight h2, which is making sense. He doesn't want to allow bishop f3. He is hitting a bishop, but he maybe missed or underestimated the move of Magnus, because probably Caruana thought that this bishop either needs to move or needs to be defended. But of course, chess is not a checker, so if something is attacked, it doesn't need to be defended or moved. Magnus played move f3. Brilliant move. Opening route to white king. Knight takes g4, queen g6. Now problem is that you cannot move the knight, because knight f4, and there will be mate. You cannot prevent mate here, because what can you do? He wants to take, and if you push, will happen, let's say, check. King moves and queen moves, and knight f2 is a threat, or knight f4 check and knight e2 is a threat. Or moment, sorry, I can do it immediately. What am I doing? Check. It is mate in 2. So, it cannot move. Queen is on g6, so knight e3 cannot move. I cannot take, because obviously takes and there will be mate. So Caruana does the only possible move. Queen e7 with idea on f takes g2. For example, if you take, would be same thing. I mean, I'm trading queens. He's just in time to trade queens. Magnus played fg2, forcing rook fb1, queen g4, queen g5. It is interesting position, because we are technically going, probably if white wants to play for a win, he will have to enter the ending. Ending would be same number of pawns, and this pawn on g2 might even fall. So first they repeated moves. Queen e2, queen e3, queen g4, queen g5. And here Magnus did incredibly good judgment. He decided to trade queens, which is far from obvious, because look, queen g5, he took bishop g5. What do we have here suddenly? Queens are gone, everything is traded, we have equal number of pawns, but this knight, which was stupid, is threatening to enter to c5 and become a great piece. Pawn on g2 may simply fall, rook is threatening to enter on b7, so why on earth would Magnus do this? Well, he did it because he correctly judged that after knight f4, threatening check and to win a bishop, bishop f4 needs to be played, because let's say you cannot escape with a king, because bishop f6. And let's say if you play move bishop h6, I can go back, bishop g5, and I don't need to make a draw because king h8 is probably winning, because rook b7 loses to bishop f6, bishop h6, rook g8. And king is a problem. So knight f4, Caruana took. And why did I say that idea of Magnus to trade queens was brilliant? Because with a limited number of pieces, everything traded, he's still actually having a mating attack. Caruana here did the only possible thing. Look, he cannot allow f3. He cannot allow defended passed pawn on g2, because then rook f4, rook h4, and rook h1 mate will happen. So he took king g2. He wants to give an exchange and hope to survive with this exchange down position. f3. King f1. Maybe king h3 was possible, but then he should lose. Bishop a1, rook a1, rook f6, because king is badly placed. f3, king f1. Okay, this is interesting position, because actually, if white would take on a1, rook a1, black is not really without the chances, because black has already one pawn for exchange. King can maybe travel to e3. Knight will travel to c5. If white doesn't manage to queen his h-pawn, white is not going to win at all. It's even, yeah, he's not going to win at all. But what is the problem? The problem is that actually black is still having mating attack. This is incredible. Rook f4. c3 was played in the game. Now, what is wrong with the move king e1? Why can't he run? Well, he cannot run because the problem is move rook d8. And now simply king cannot run because rook e4. And if you, let's say, if you move the knight, then bishop c3. So you cannot move the knight. If you don't move the knight, how do you protect the pawn? So this is something which is here actually quite a serious problem. And you cannot, let's say, I don't know, move the rook from being attacked, because this move will happen. Well, now rook cannot move, because if rook moves, you're in the mating net. Next move is mate. And if king runs, okay, if king runs, it doesn't help. Because rook takes, I want rook e2. And then such a kind of move does not really help again, because check, king needs to move, let's say takes, check, rook enters on a second rank, or if king f1, then I don't need to enter, I can play a move, such a move, and simply mate, because this is going to be mating net. Bishop f4, king up, and now indeed mating net. So problem here, rook f4, is that he cannot get out of the box. c3, rook d8, d4, more or less forced moves. But it is really nice to see, for example, here, that Magnus believes is his attack. He is not in a hurry at all to win an exchange. And with so limited number of pieces that he can actually deliver this attack. So rook f4, c3, rook d8, d4. And here is a little bit somehow a pity. Because Magnus played move bishop h6, which is winning. But he had a better move. A where he finished to this fantastic game was bishop takes d4. Takes, which is only move because rook d1 loses to rook h4. And you are still in a mating net. So bishop d4, and after c d4, rook d4, rook h4, king e1, because king g1, king h8, king e1, rook takes d4. And next move is unstoppable, rook h1 mate. This would be really fantastic finish. And look here, pieces of Caruana, completely useless. And this useless knight on a4 stay there forever. Magnus played bishop h6, which is also winning. Rook e1, rook e4, king d1. I assume that there are different ways to win this position, but or maybe not so many different ways, because after all we still have material equality. But next move is very nice. When you have advantage in a better placed pieces, because it will not remain like this forever, open up the position, and this is exactly what Magnus does. He pushes c5. Knight c5 is now losing due to rook e2, because king is horrible. And because there is no move rook b2. This is the reason, because look, otherwise rook e2 will be winning immediately, but rook b2 is defending. So that's why first c5, to send this knight to c5, to send this knight away, so to be able to enter with the rook. King c2 was played, but now c takes d4, king d3, rook e2, c4. White is not going to get mated, rook f2, but we lose due to different reasons. Rook d1, rook e3, and okay, white is 2 pawns down and has a bad position, and Caruana here resigned, and this is, I think, one of the very beautiful games where giving a pawn for a factor time matters. And I was actually very impressed by that with so few pieces on a board in descending, that mating without the queens, that mating attack simply continues. It was, to me, very beautiful game played by Magnus.